morning, everyone, and welcome to this CARE4BIO information session about JRC in Cluster 6. Just to put a little bit of context, at CARE4BIO, we try to provide Cluster 6 NCPs as well as stakeholders with important information that can help with them with their applications and understanding of all the ecosystem of Horizon Europe Cluster 6. And we had realized that we receive a lot of questions about JRC. And we have decided, with the support of 4 speakers from the JRC, to give you important information about how the JRC can interact with the stakeholders in the Cluster 6 of Horizon Europe, not only in regards with proposals themselves, but more generally. So today we will have 4 speakers with us. Matteo Fornara, that will give an introduction to the session. We will have Giacomo Grassi, that will introduce the topic of JRC and climate and the COP28. Michaela Batorova, that will introduce the link between JRC and Horizon Europe, and eventually Arwyn Jones, that will present the JRC portfolio about biodiversity and natural capital. So now I will leave the floor to Matteo Fornara for the introduction.
Thank you. Thank you, Antoine. I hope you can listen and hear me well. Thank you to you and to Cluster 6, of course, for the opportunity to give a hint on the activity of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. My task is to, I hope, quickly introduce the activity of the JRC in general terms, for those who are not very familiar with us. And then I'm very happy to have here today 3 colleagues who are very qualified to intervene, to support my intervention, and hopefully to satisfy the needs of the participants to know more about the JRC, the JRC's activity in the areas covered by Cluster 6. My task is to present, as I said, very quickly the JRC in general, and then also to give you a couple of information on current activities, which I hope may be interesting for the participants. Our role is to support the EU policies with evidence, and of course scientific evidence based on knowledge and on science, trying to kind of produce something that can be useful and used by the policymaker in the European at European level, but not also more and more also at national and at regional level. As we all know, the information overload is very abundant, and it is increasing quite exponentially, and our work is to make it digestible to the policymaker in the whole EU policy cycle. We try to do that by anticipating trends, scientific trends, by integrating the different areas of policy, and by evaluating also the impact of our work on the EU policies. And we do that within the Commission, because we are, as all the other services of the Commission, a Directorate General of the main European institution, trying to support the policies and to positively impact the society. As a quick example of our anticipation, we work on global megatrends to try to anticipate and foresee what may happen in the society and in the world in a wide range of areas for the next decades. In terms of integration, I just give one example just to make it understandable, not maybe in areas linked to the Cluster 6. Our approach on cancer, it's based on a methodology which we call Knowledge Center. I will tell a couple of words later on that. But we really try to put together all the information which exists at European level, and not only, even beyond, to provide data which may support the political decision in the area, in the selected area. And on the impact, I guess our numbers are quite relevant, because independent evaluations say that almost all of our reports has an impact on the European policy, an important, substantial impact. Others have, in any case, a moderate impact. That means that we can quite say that the European policies are based on science and knowledge input. Our areas of research are wide. They cover almost all the areas of research, not only the more traditional, I would say, areas for the JRC linked to physics, chemistry, biology, but also to new areas more linked to social and soft science areas. So I would say like economy, finance, and markets, but also over the last years, migration, territorial development, demography has become an issue for the JRC, and so on. We cover mostly all the areas. Since a couple of years, we propose a methodology which we call portfolio, which is an horizontal, holistic approach, which tries to put together all the different areas of activity of the JRC in a holistic way. I would say that the big area of the Green Deal, which may be the area of more linked to the activity of Cluster 6, is covered by almost about 20 of our 33 portfolios. And today, my colleague Arwyn Jones will intervene on his on the portfolio on which he works on biodiversity. But all the scientists of the JRC are working in one of more of these portfolio areas. And the result of this of the work of the portfolio has already given a strong contribution to the Commission work program and to the Commission work of last year. For instance, I take that as an example. For instance, on very important decisions that the Commission has taken in the areas, for instance, of critical raw materials or artificial intelligence. So areas where the priority given by the Commission and by the President von der Leyen has been clear over the last 12 months, and will be clear also for this year. This year, of course, is a particular year for the European Union because there will be elections of the European Parliament, a new Commission. But we believe that the areas which are covered by the research of the JRC will still be relevant even for the next Commission and for the years to come. In terms of methodology, we support the activity of the portfolio with the activity of the knowledge centers, which gather and share information on the principle of open science to all the stakeholders interested, also in areas directly of interest of Cluster 6, like biodiversity, bioeconomy, and so on. On a more methodological approach, I would say, more horizontal approach, the Competence Center try to support the activity not only of the JRC, but of the whole Commission and of the other institutions in managing data, which has become, over the last years, one of the main challenges of science as such. Just a couple of words on our structure. We have about 3,000 people, staff, 3/4 of which are have a technical and scientific background, so they are scientists and they work mostly in our research facilities. We own about 50 large-scale laboratories, which are based in our scientific sites. Of course, our top management is in Brussels, is based in Brussels with all the rest of the Commission. but our scientific sites are based in 5 countries. I personally speak from the site based in Ispra in Italy, which is the main site in terms of dimension, and the others are based in Belgium, Germany, Holland, and in Spain. This slide shows only a few, 3 actually, research infrastructures that we host. These are based in Ispra on electrical vehicles, on structural assessment, on the management of the effects of natural and man-made crises all over the world. And of course, the activity of these laboratories is the basis both for some standards in the case of ELSA, or of operational tools in terms of humanitarian aid or intervention in crisis, like the crisis room. And we could show much more on that, but I will just focus, as I said at the beginning, on a couple of issues or actions which are ongoing and which may be interesting for the audience, today's audience. The first is the open access to JRC research infrastructure. Since a few years, the JRC has opened his lab to the participation of partners, scientific partners, which may come to our labs and work together with the JRC scientists on commonly agreed and mutually agreed sectors or areas of scientific areas. For the moment, we have 7 calls to open 7 labs, indeed, of the JRC, and the deadline is at the end of this month. These calls are put forward on our website, the EU Science Hub, and you find all the information in the links that are added in the slides, and will be put available to you at the end of this session. I wanted to mention also another event which will happen soon, actually next week. There will be the launch of the Rural Toolkit, which is the comprehensive guide to the EU funding and support opportunities for rural areas. This is coordinated by the JRC. The launch will happen on the 6th of February, which is maybe, I think, Wednesday next week. And this tool aims to help local authorities, institutions, stakeholders, businesses, and individuals also to identify and take advantage of existing EU funds, programs, and other funding and support initiatives, and to foster development in rural territories. Of course, the participation is open to everybody. Finally, the last information relates to communication activity that we have launched a few years ago. It is called Science Flash, and has the particularity to focus on the JRC activity in relation to each of the 27 member states of the European Union. This bulletin is published in the national language of each country. In this slide, I show a picture of the publication with Spain, but it exists in all the languages for all the countries, and it is published a couple of years or 3 times a year, a couple of times or 3 times a year for each member state, and the subscription are indicated in the slide. So this was basically my introduction, my presentation. I hope I was not too long, and I hope there is still time for my colleagues to make their intervention. Thank you, Antoine, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Matteo, for the presentation. I think it was very comprehensive and useful, especially also the information about the launch of the Rural Toolkit and the Science Flash at the end. We will now move on to more topic-specific presentations. So we will have first Giacomo Grassi that will introduce some issues related to JRC and climate, JRC and COP28. So the floor is yours, Giacomo.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I would provide a snapshot of what the JRC did at the COP28, the climate conference, the annual climate conference that was held in Dubai in December. I will specifically provide a review of one of the side events that JRC organized. The EU pavilion hosted tens of side events, and in this website you can find them all, including streaming. This side event cover all aspects of climate change. Some of them, nearly 10, were organized by the JRC, mostly online. What I will tell you about is the only physical side event organized in Dubai that we organized. And this side event was entitled Pathway to Climate Neutrality, and it's linked to a portfolio that has the same name. The portfolio is those groups that also Matteo mentioned before. Is a way of the work of JRC is organized. So this side event, so close to negotiating room, let's say, included a set of scientific presentations from the JRC on the energy system, global emission, and land use, and on the global carbon project. And then it was followed by a high-level panel discussion on the challenges of using science-based information for climate policy. We had a high-level participation. We had the general director of the JRC and the IPCC chair. So a high-level discussion on the interaction between science and policy. Just to give you a snapshot of what has been the contribution of JRC to this side event, we had a presentation on the Global Energy and Climate Outlook called GECO. That is an annual publication by the colleagues in Seville that address the current and future scenarios on energy and emission at the European and global level. These documents provide input to the IPCC and other UN reports. Another presentation touched the emission dataset for global atmospheric research, EDGAR, which is the most widely used global dataset on greenhouse gas emission at country level. It is the dataset, the main dataset, for example, used by the IPCC assessment report. So it's an invaluable source of information for anyone working on climate data and climate emission, especially. Third presentation that I made, and I would spend a few words on that, is on reconciling land use fluxes for the global stocktake. So what is the global stocktake and how it fits in the Paris Agreement? So I will use an analogy to describe how the Paris Agreement works. I mean, I assume that you know the basic of the Paris Agreement, the big global agreement made in 2015, where countries committed to reduce emissions with the aim to hold the increase of global temperature well below 2 degrees compared to the historical, to the pre-industrial times. So this analogy is somehow putting the Paris Agreement into a car. And we have three elements, three actors: the policymaker, that is the driver in this case. Then we have the car dashboard that, like the national greenhouse gas inventory, provide basic information to the policymaker to say which are the current level of emission. But then we have the navigation system that are somehow the models used in the IPCC assessment report that tells the driver where they are, and especially allow the driver to select a destination and outline possible routes to reach this destination. And the same approach occurs in the Paris Agreement, especially with the global stocktake. So the main aim of the COP28 in Dubai was this global stocktake. The global stocktake is somehow, let's see where we are compared to what we should be. So it's like the driver that assess with the navigation system where they are compared to the planned route. So the global stocktake essentially compare the historical and projected data from countries and from models, the models used in the IPCC assessment report. And I would focus especially on land use and forest. Land use and forest are especially important and will become more and more important. These are representative emission pathway compatible with the Paris Agreement. And you see that emissions from fossil fuel have to be reduced close to zero. And not all emission can be brought to zero. And the remaining emission will have to be compensated by an equivalent amount of CO2 removals. And most of these CO2 removal are expected to occur on forest. So the relative importance of the forest sink will increase over time. There is a problem, though. The problem that we identified at JRC is that global models and national greenhouse gas inventory have a different definitions of what is the anthropogenic CO2 flux from land, from forest. Here is a snapshot of the global carbon budget. On the left, you have the anthropogenic emission, mostly from fossil fuel and partly from deforestation. On the right is where these emissions go. Nearly half remain in the atmosphere, creating a global warming problem, but then part is absorbed by ocean and part is absorbed by forest. So the problem of a mismatch in definition is actually a mismatch of system boundaries. So essentially, the IPCC assessment report call anthropogenic land fluxes only those essentially from land use change, while the national greenhouse gas inventory include also a part of the land sink that the IPCC model call natural. So there is a different definition of what is anthropogenic and what is natural. And this create a gap in estimates of what is anthropogenic land use estimates of about 6 gigatons of CO2, which is 15% of total greenhouse gas emission, more than emission from US. This mismatch is a serious one. And coming back to the analogy of we used before, it's like the car dashboard use kilometer and the navigation system use miles. So there is no one approach, one metric that is better than the other. The only mistake we should avoid to do is compare one with the other, because it would be a comparison of apple to oranges. This is actually the situation. So in the global stocktake, we risk to have this kind of situation where the future gap between the country action and planned action and the pathway needed to the Paris Agreement is not estimated correctly, because we do an apple to orange comparison. We presented a recent paper that we published in Nature just before the COP that essentially aligned the climate scenario to emission inventories. And these allow to make an apple to apple comparison between the country historical and projected emission and what are the models benchmarked by the IPCC. I conclude with this small story that triggered the discussion in the panel. The panel discussed about the difficulty of using science in the policy interface, and the story we suggested to use as a basis for discussion is that one. So imagine two guys in a balloon that get lost, and they see two persons below and says, "Can you tell where I am? We are lost." And the people below say, "Well, you are latitude X, Y, Z, 100 meters above the sea level." But the people in the balloon say, "Well, you must be a scientist. I asked you a simple question. You gave me too complex information, and I'm still lost." And people below say, "Well, you must be a policymaker. I gave you an accurate answer, but you don't understand, and you blame me." So this cartoon depicts quite well, I think, the difficulty of interaction between scientist and policymaker. And this, as if you want to see the video of the set event, trigger, I think, a nice discussion between the JRC General Director Stephen Quest and Jim Skee, the chair of the IPCC. Given that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giacomo. It was very, very clear and helped us to understand the methodology of JRC and the bridge between science and policy and the role that you can have within it. I will now leave the floor to Michaela Batorova to have a presentation of the link between JRC and Horizon Europe. I think it will also interest a lot of people here.
Yes, good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much for having me here today. So yes, as Antonio already said, I will give you a short walk through the rules of the JRC's participation in Horizon Europe projects, because I understand that in the audience we have lots of NCPs, but also potential applicants of Horizon Europe projects. At the beginning, maybe it's good to stress that in comparison to the Horizon Europe general annexes where the rules for JRC's participation are explained. There is nothing new that I'm going to tell you today, but rather my presentation will focus on reinforcing or somehow refreshing some of the main elements which shape our participation in this framework program for research and innovation. So at the beginning, I need to stress that in comparison to the previous framework program, Horizon 2020, under Horizon Europe, the JRC is not competing in the bidding. So the JRC is not taking part in any applying consortium. The JRC cannot be really a participant at the stage of sending the application, and the JRC cannot prepare the proposals by any applicant. And this is for one very simple reason. JRC is Commission's department, so it is our mission and mandate to make sure that our scientific knowledge is used for the benefits of EU policy making, and that's why we do take an active part in drafting the Horizon Europe work program and drafting the Horizon Europe calls. And thus, in order to avoid the conflict of interest, we took the position that we are not participating in bidding for the Horizon Europe funding. At the same time, however, the JRC's participation in the projects funded by Horizon Europe is extremely important for our scientists in order to make sure that they are really connected with the best scientists in Europe and in the whole world. So we still had to find a way how to assure this link between the JRC scientists and the scientific community. And that's why during the co-creation of the Horizon Europe work program, we do select several topics or several scopes which we considered as strategically important for our participation. And in those specific calls, all the applicants are able to see what the JRC intends or how the JRC intends to contribute to those projects which are eventually selected for funding. Maybe another important element mentioned here, that in our participation in these collaborative projects, we fund our participation with our own budget, so we are not taking the budget from the winning consortia. So maybe more details. There are basically three scenarios how the applicants can envisage the JRC's involvement in their projects. In situations where the applicants see that there is some kind of mentioning of the JRC in the specific topic or the specific call, there are two alternatives. So one is an alternative where the JRC can be considered in the project as a beneficiary requesting zero funding. In that case, the JRC would collaborate with the consortia via acceding grant agreement. And then there is another option where the JRC can participate in the project as an associated partner. So there we would collaborate via signing the consortium agreement, but we will not sign or we will not accede the grant agreement, as it's the same rule for all the other associated partners. There is also a third alternative where the JRC can still collaborate with the winning consortia, but as a non-beneficiary. That is in the situations when at certain moments the winning consortia or the JRC also finds out that the project, even though the call has not been identified during the co-creation process for JRC's participation, but the actual projects which were selected for funding is very interesting for the JRC, then there is still a possibility to collaborate via JRC, for example, by signing a so-called collaboration agreement, or the JRC can join the project's scientific advisory board. But the point is that we will really not be considered as beneficiaries or partners in this specific project. Now, many of you may be asked, I may have a question like how to identify those calls in which the JRC can potentially participate as a beneficiary or as an associated partner. Well, here I give you the specific examples. when the applicants open the specific topic, there under the eligibility conditions, they may find a standard phrase which says that the Joint Research Center can participate as member of the consortium selected for funding. So this is a kind of identifier or a flag which tells to the applicants that they can potentially count with the JRC's involvement in the project as a beneficiary requesting zero funding. And at the same time, in 99% of the topics, after seeing this sentence in the eligibility conditions, applicants would also find short descriptions in the scope of the specific topic about what exactly the JRC is ready to offer to those projects. But then there is another situation when there is no mentioning of the standard reference under the eligibility conditions, but there is still some kind of reference under the topic scope. So this is for the situations when the JRC during the co-creation process has not been interested to participate in the project as a beneficiary, but still would like to be involved in the project as an associated partner. So again, if you find a topic where you see some kind of reference encouraging the applicants to collaborate with the JRC, then the applicants can potentially count with the JRC's involvement in their project as an associated partner. Very important message that I want to pass here, that in 99% of the calls in which you find the references on the JRC, the participation of the JRC in the project is non-mandatory, so it's voluntary. So it's really only an option for the applicants to consider the JRC's contribution to the project, and vice versa. It's also up to the JRC to at the end decide whether they want to participate in the project or not. So really at the end it's up to the results of the negotiations between the winning consortia and the JRC, which form and whether the JRC will actually join the project or not. On this slide, you can find an extract from the list of all the Horizon Europe topics which are envisaged for JRC's participation. I provide also a specific link to the NCP portal, where I understand that actually if you are a member of the NCP portal, you are able to access the full list. And in this list, you will also find additional information about the potential contribution of the JRC to specific topics. So you'll have all kinds of links to JRC's websites where you can get more information about the JRC's potential contribution to the project. So this is somehow already a kind of a summary of what I said, but I still think it's important to emphasize that as I said, JRC cannot participate in drafting the project proposals because we have been involved in the co-creation of the specific calls. But the applicants, if they are really interested in involving JRC in their project, so they can envisage in their project proposal the JRC's potential contribution based on the information which is provided in the specific topic scope, or they can get more information from the JRC's homepage or the NCP portal, as I just mentioned, or they can also reach out to the JRCs through the JRC NCP network email in order to get more specific information. Of course, if we receive this kind of email with request for more specific information, we are happy to provide this additional information on our potential contribution to the project. But at the same time, we need to assure that all the other applicants would receive the same type of information. So that's why in parallel, we would be creating also the topic-specific frequently asked questions, which you can find under the Funding and Tenders portal, where you would receive this additional information to the specific topic. And then only once the project is selected for funding, so once the consortium received the notification from the commission that their project has been selected for funding, that's the moment when the project leader can reach out to the JRC and try to get really more information about more specific contribution of the JRC to their project. And before the grant agreement is signed, so usually there are these 2-3 months, there's this 2-3 months time for negotiating the JRC specific contribution to the project. And then if an agreement is found, then the JRC may accede to the grant agreement as a beneficiary requesting zero funding or as an associated partner and become a member of the consortium. As I mentioned, there is also this third possibility where the JRC can still collaborate with the consortia, but in a non-beneficiary way. So normally, and this is very common, that the JRC would join the project scientific advisory board after receiving an invitation from the project consortium. But then, of course, this collaboration is somehow beyond the rules which are shaping the Horizon Europe participation. And there is one little exception for the Marie Skłodowska Action Program, where in most of the calls, due to their specific nature, the JRC can take the role only as associated partner, and there are only actually 2 calls which are called here the staff exchange and feedback to policy actions, where the JRC can participate as beneficiary requesting zero funding. And maybe by closing this and my presentation here, I just would like to say that what are the typical activities or contributions of JRC to Horizon Europe project. So in general, JRC can act as interface between the research activities and regulatory aspects. We often engage with these Horizon Europe funded projects for knowledge management activities, but where we also try to ensure that relevant research is used for policy making and contributes to effective feedback to policy within Horizon Europe other policies. And we also usually focus on tasks such as integrating research results and data in databases and maintaining this databasing, or validating and maintaining models, providing advice, data analytics. But then, as was already mentioned, we also offer our access to our research infrastructure, information system, databases, models, and so on. And I really encourage to all the NCPs and all the applicants to actively search through the funding and tenders portal, frequently asked question section, in order to get really more information to specific topic and how the JRC can contribute to those topics. So thank you very much. That's it. And I'm also happy to, of course, may you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out also by emails. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michaela. I think it could not have been much clearer. And now we are moving back again into the specifics in terms of topics, as our next speaker, Arwyn Jones, will introduce one of the JRC portfolios that Matteo presented in the beginning. So the portfolio number 10 on healthy biodiversity and natural capital accounting. Yeah, it's Arwyn Jones, the next speaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, perfect. And I hope you can also see the screen. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So indeed, my name is Arwyn Jones. I work in the land resources unit of the JRC, and I'd like to present to you the work we are doing in the healthy biodiversity portfolio. The portfolios are let's say a new structure to our work program, where they are collaborative entities that bring together the activities of many groups and many units here to address specific priorities of the Commission work program. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of people, let's say, are associated in the sort of the leadership of this portfolio. And then underneath, we also have many more, again, of colleagues who are working on the different aspects. And I just want to give you a quick flavor this morning of the work that we are carrying out in this portfolio. So the topics is healthy biodiversity and natural capital accounting. Okay, so maybe just to flag why biodiversity is important. If you want to consider a world without biodiversity, all you have to do is look up at the night sky, and there you see a world without biodiversity. Biodiversity is the whole collection of living organisms on the planet are basically responsible for our existence in terms of the ecosystem services that we all depend upon. And some simple examples are pollinators, obviously, which are responsible for about a third of the global crop production. There are a whole bunch of invertebrates that maintain the health of plants. We are dependent on bacteria in the soil for nutrients and also in terms of medicine, such as antibiotics and other pharmaceuticals. And the vegetation that we have on the planet, together with life in the soil, actually regulates our climate and can help mitigate climate change. So biodiversity is a critical aspect and very often not probably considered in terms of highest priorities in dealing with other policy areas. It's also worth understanding that there are significant efforts going on at the moment to try and put value onto the ecosystem services that we provide. And this rather complex diagram tries to show and put some numbers on our human use of these ecosystem services in relation to food production, in terms of water purification, in terms to our recreational habits, in terms of timber provision and so on. And you can see that basically that there's a rather conservative estimate that the ecosystem services that we depend upon solely within the European Union comes up to around 250 billion euros per year. So this is a significant amount of value that has been given to us in essence for free. But I think the evidence is also out there that the biodiversity of the EU is under threat. We have had a number of, let's say, shocks to the system over the past 10, 20 years in terms of the COVID pandemic, the financial banking crisis of the early 2000s. We have the continued pressure of climate change. I think the message that we're trying to provoke is that if we lose our biodiversity, then all of these other issues will be very minor in relation to the impacts on our lives. So under the current Green Deal program, the EU will spend at least 20 billion euros a year to protect and restore nature. And that sounds like a very impressive figure, but we have to also consider that problems such as invasive alien species, it's estimated cost agricultural production and the work to remove around 12 billion euro a year. We also don't have a real full understanding of the impact of chemicals and how these chemicals are used in the environment have an impact on biodiversity. And actually, a large part of our biodiversity, probably around 60% of the biodiversity in Europe is unknown, especially when we look at soil as an ecosystem which provides the backbone to other terrestrial habitats. So what the portfolio in the JRC tries to do is to bring together 9 specific projects. And okay, I won't go into detail on this, but you can look at them when you have the presentations afterwards. But it brings 9 core activities dealing with natural resource assessment, with chemicals and ecotoxicology, finance, and ecosystem assessment together to address a common issue. And the idea is that by bringing all these linkages together, we have a much stronger base in which to assess the issues affecting biodiversity. In essence, the topic builds on a number of, let's say, knowledge platforms within the JRC. This was alluded to earlier, specifically dealing with invasive alien species in terms of water and freshwater quality, marine and freshwater quality and biodiversity, in terms of soils and the processes that are functioning within soils. We also have a group, as I said, on chemicals and ecotoxicology, people working on sustainable agricultural practices, and then also on sustainable finance and natural capital accounting. And all these groups come together, let's say, to support and underpin the Knowledge Centre for Biodiversity, which has been established at the JRC as a commission-wide service to support the issues of biodiversity in different policy areas across all commission services. So, as I said, the portfolio maintains the Knowledge Centre for Biodiversity, but it also has a number of other strong linkages with EU executive agencies, so with the European Environment Agency, with the Food Safety Agency in Parma, with the European Chemicals Agency in Finland, and also with UN agencies, so the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, as you can imagine, a World Food Programme, and the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, have all strong interactions with the work of the portfolio, because we're not necessarily focusing on the EU per se, but also trying to understand what is the impact of the EU on biodiversity beyond its borders, in terms of the consumerism and human activities that are driven by the EU in other parts of the world. I'll mention that. Maybe one area just to show how the portfolio is working is looking at the impact of pesticides. As you know, originally in the Green Deal, there was a proposal to reduce the use of pesticides, and especially pesticides, the more hazardous aspects of pesticides. And this obviously has a huge cross-sectorial relevance in terms of biodiversity, but also in terms of the Common Agricultural Policy, in terms of the Zero Pollution Action Plan, in terms of measures to understand the soil health. And what we try to do is in this group is to bring together different elements that are targeting pesticide-related work. So in terms of risk assessment of pesticides on the environment and on human health, to try and understand what is the situation, what's the state of the environment in terms of pesticide residues, and especially persistent residues in water and in soils, and then to really understand the impact of these residues on biodiversity in terms of their metabolism, in terms of cocktails of residues that probably haven't been considered in detail. And then how do we develop indicators to assess the progress of policies to try and tackle this particular aspect. So that's basically sort of a way in which the portfolio is bringing together the different threads of the JRC's work. A very strong component of the portfolio is then also related to monitoring. So we actually coordinate a pan-European monitoring systems, looking at soils, looking at the landscape in general, a specific aspect looking at grassland biodiversity in relation to different management practices, and also collaborating with member states and other projects to understand specific aspects such as pollinators and invasive alien species. So what we try to do is to design standardized sampling protocols to harmonize data so that all these products and activities have a certain synergy to them, so that we can then use them in various assessments and scenario analysis to understand pros and cons or strengths and weaknesses of individual policy areas. Maybe just having an eye to the future. In the last conference of parties for the Convention on Biological Diversity, there was a decision to establish a global biodiversity framework, and so obviously the portfolio is looking and collaborating with countries to establish observatories and better measures within the EU biodiversity strategy that reflect, let's say, the aims and aspirations that came out of the Montreal COP. As I hinted, we are looking strongly to try and bring biodiversity into economics and finance discussions. Very often, biodiversity is not considered when we look at alternatives to GDP, for example. That's green accounting. So these is a strong area for development, and also very importantly, looking at the links between biodiversity and human health. And we've all heard about the mitigation of heat effects by greener urban environments, the mental health benefits for being immersed in biodiversity, and so on. So these are some of the new elements that we are investigating as well. So indeed, the final slide is that we're looking to develop indicators that have a cross policy application to them. We want to drive research linking biodiversity with land use, chemicals, and finance. And so we have the mission programs of the Horizon Europe cluster. Also, we have the science program of cluster 6 to address this. We particularly want to look at developing foresight activities, so to provide advance warning of issues that policymakers have to consider, and then finally, support strategies and to build on the work that's going on between the different knowledge platforms that are within the portfolio. Okay, with that, I'll close, and happy to provide any answers to questions that people might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this presentation that deals directly with topics that are at the heart of the cluster 6. I think that we have come to the end of this information session. I would like to thank once again all our 4 speakers, Matteo, Fornara, Giacomo, Grassi, Michaela, Batorova, and Arwyn Jones, for their very, very informative sessions. I think that now we have a very clear vision of how the JRC works, of how JRC helps to link science and policies, how JRC can help in terms of Horizon Europe projects, and how it links to the cluster 6 in terms of topics as well. So thank you very much. And thank you also to the audience for following this session. We will be back with more informative session targeting very specific topics. We will keep this format of 1 hour session, so it doesn't take too much of your time, while being very, while giving you as much information as possible. So thank you very much, and see you next time with CARE4BIO.